November 4th. Mark that date. This is the first real political test for Donald Trump's second term, and the results could reshape the entire landscape heading into the 2026 midterms. We're talking governor races in Virginia and New Jersey, a mayoral showdown in New York City that has Trump himself issuing threats, and a redistricting battle in California that could flip 5 congressional seats. The stakes, massive. The tension, through the roof. And what we're seeing unfold right now tells us everything about where this country is headed. I spent years working inside one of the biggest, most recognized media outlets you can think of. I watched editors twist stories to fit whatever narrative the bosses wanted that week. I saw truth getting buried under layers of spin and agenda. So I walked away. Now I work for myself, I answer to no one, and I tell you what actually matters, not what someone wants you to believe. And here's what I need from you. If this kind of independent reporting matters to you, if you value someone who isn't reading from a script handed down by corporate overlords, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel. And if you really want to support what we're building here, something real, something honest, consider becoming a channel sponsor. It's people like you who make it possible for voices like mine to exist outside the system. All right, let's dig in. So here's what Trump posted, and I'm paraphrasing but keeping his exact meaning. He said if Zohran Mamdani, the socialist candidate, wins the New York City mayor's race, he'll cut federal funding to the city down to the absolute legal minimum. Why? Because according to Trump, a communist, his word, has zero chance of making New York succeed or even survive. Trump went on to say he'd rather see a Democrat with a track record win than a communist with no experience and a history of, quote, complete and absolute failure. Now, let's be clear about what's happening here. A sitting president is threatening to financially strangle one of the largest cities in America because he doesn't like the political ideology of a potential mayor. Think about that. Not because of corruption, not because of criminal activity, but because of political beliefs. And whether you agree with Mamdani's policies or not, this sets a precedent that should concern everyone. What happens when the president decides your city doesn't deserve federal money because your local leadership doesn't align with his views? Trump also threw in a comment about Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate, saying a vote for Sliwa is essentially a vote for Mamdani, and that even if you don't like Andrew Cuomo, you have no choice but to vote for him. So the former president is out here playing political puppet master, trying to force New Yorkers into a corner. And this is where it gets interesting, because New York City hasn't exactly been Trump's biggest fan base lately. The New York City mayor's race has become this rare three-way battle. On one side, you've got Zohran Mamdani, the 34-year-old Democratic socialist who won the Democratic primary by running on affordability and taking on the establishment. His campaign built momentum around making the city livable for working people, not just the wealthy elite. If he wins, he becomes the second youngest mayor in New York history and the first Muslim to hold the office. Then there's Andrew Cuomo, the political veteran trying to claw his way back after resigning as governor in 2021 amid allegations of inappropriate conduct. He's running as an independent after losing the Democratic primary, positioning himself as the experienced hand who knows how to run the city and, crucially, how to stand up to Trump. His message is basically, you need someone who can fight back against what's coming from Washington. And then Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, whose chances are so slim that even Trump won't back him. Sliwa's campaign has been chaotic. He claims people offered him $10 million to drop out, that he's received threats against his life and his wife Nancy's life, and now he needs armed security for the first time in his 71 years. He's positioning himself as the outsider fighting against elite billionaires who think they own the world. But realistically, in a city that votes overwhelmingly Democratic, Sliwa's path to victory is nearly impossible. Here's what makes this race fascinating. Early voting numbers have exploded. Over 730,000 New Yorkers voted early, compared to just 170,000 in 2021. That's more than 4 times the turnout. People are energized, they're concerned, and they're showing up. The polls from late October showed Mamdani with a commanding lead, but in a 3-way race, anything can happen. And remember, Trump isn't just casually commenting on this race. He's actively threatening the city's financial future. He's talking about sending the National Guard to New York if Mamdani wins. He announced on television that he'd slash funding. This isn't normal political commentary. This is a sitting president trying to intimidate voters in a local election. And whether his threats are legal, whether he could actually follow through, that's almost beside the point. The threat itself is designed to create fear and pressure. Now let's talk about New Jersey, because this governor's race is just as intense and potentially more consequential for national politics. You've got Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, the Democrat, running against Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, who narrowly lost to Phil Murphy in 2021. And both parties are watching this race like hawks, because New Jersey, despite voting blue in presidential elections, has a history of going purple in state races. Ciattarelli is running on affordability, trying to make New Jersey livable again for middle-class families getting crushed by property taxes and skyrocketing utility bills. He's promised to declare a state of emergency on day one to freeze electric rates, which have gone through the roof. His message resonates with people who feel like they're drowning financially, who can't keep up with the cost of living in what's supposed to be one of America's wealthiest states. Sherrill, meanwhile, is positioning herself as the moderate who can win back a Republican district, which she did in 2018. She's a Navy veteran, former federal prosecutor, and she's trying to tie Ciattarelli to Trump at every opportunity. Her strategy is clear: make this a referendum on Trump's chaos, on his policies, on his impact on the state. She's got endorsements from police associations and even some former Republican congresspeople, but here's where it gets messy. Ciattarelli isn't running away from Trump, he's leaning into that connection. During debates, he's pushed back against Sherrill's attempts to make everything about the former president. And there's personal animosity here too. Ciattarelli is suing Sherrill for defamation over claims she made about his career. Sherrill, on her end, has criticized Ciattarelli for attacking her military service, drawing parallels to Trump's habit of going after veterans despite never serving himself. The issues driving this race are bread and butter concerns: property taxes, electric bills, public safety, school quality. New Jersey's public schools have dropped from 2nd to 12th in national rankings. Nonviolent crime is up. People are frustrated, they're angry, and they want solutions, not political theater. Ciattarelli argues Sherrill can't offer specific answers to these problems. Sherrill argues Ciattarelli is just another Trump-aligned Republican who'll make things worse. What makes New Jersey crucial is this: if Democrats can pull off a third straight gubernatorial win, something no party has done since the 1970s, it sends a signal heading into 2026. It says Trump's influence isn't enough to flip purple states red, but if Ciattarelli wins, especially after Trump's federal government shutdown, it means Republican messaging on costs and safety is breaking through despite the chaos in Washington. National parties are treating this as a test case, a preview of what messages work and what falls flat. Over in Virginia, you've got another fascinating race, and this one guarantees the state's first woman governor, because both candidates are women. On the Republican side, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, a conservative, an evangelical, a former Marine. On the Democratic side, former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, a former CIA operative running as a centrist. If Earl Sears wins, she becomes the first black woman governor of Virginia. Virginia has this tradition where they elect a governor from the opposite party of whoever's president. Republican president, Democratic governor the next year, and vice versa. That tradition favors Spanberger right now. Plus, Trump lost Virginia 3 times in 2016, 2020, and 2024, and it wasn't even close. His unpopularity in the state, combined with the federal shutdown affecting Northern Virginia, which relies heavily on government employment, creates headwinds for Republicans. But here's the twist: Trump hasn't endorsed Earl Sears, his own party's candidate. That's unusual and potentially significant. It suggests either internal Republican tensions or a calculation that his endorsement might hurt more than help in a state where he's deeply unpopular. Spanberger, meanwhile, has endorsements from Virginia police associations and former Republican officials trying to build a coalition that goes beyond traditional Democratic voters. The issues here mirror what we're seeing elsewhere: cost of living, public safety, education, and the looming presence of federal dysfunction. Northern Virginia, the wealthy suburbs around D.C., typically leans Democratic, but the shutdown could suppress turnout there. If Earl Sears can get over 40% in those northern suburbs while running up her numbers in rural areas, she has a path, but it's narrow and it requires everything breaking right. Now, California. Proposition 5. This is where things get really interesting from a structural politics perspective. Voters are deciding whether to redraw congressional district maps to balance out what Texas Republicans did earlier this year. Texas did a mid-decade redistricting that gave Republicans 5 additional seats. California Democrats saw that and said, all right, 2 can play this game. Proposition 5 would replace the boundaries set by California's nonpartisan redistricting commission with new maps drawn by the Democratic-controlled state legislature and signed by Governor Newsom. The result? Democrats could pick up as many as 5 additional House seats in the 2026 midterms. This is gerrymandering, let's be honest. Both sides do it. When you redraw districts to favor your party, that's the definition of gerrymandering. But here's the context. Californians generally like their nonpartisan commission. There wasn't talk of getting rid of it until Texas made their move. This is reactive, it's tit for tat, it's both parties pushing the boundaries, because control of the House is so razor thin that even a handful of seats can flip everything. And both parties are going further than they have before, because the stakes have never been higher. For Trump, these elections aren't about him being on the ballot, but they're absolutely about him. If Republican candidates win in these key races, his team gets to claim voters support his agenda, his hardline immigration stance, his budget position, his entire approach. If Democrats sweep the governor's mansions and major cities, that's a warning sign heading into 2026. It tells Republicans that Trump's gravitational pull might not be enough, that his policies and his chaos might be driving voters away rather than energizing the base. Let me give you the bottom line on what we just covered, because this is critical. November 4th is testing Trump's influence across multiple battlegrounds. In New York, he's threatening federal funding to pressure voters against a socialist candidate. In New Jersey and Virginia, governors' races could signal whether his impact helps or hurts Republican chances in purple states. And in California, we're seeing the structural fight over congressional maps that could determine House control for years. Every one of these races connects back to the larger question: where is American politics headed, and does Trump make Republican candidates more electable or less? If you found this breakdown valuable, if you appreciate someone laying out the facts without the partisan spin, then I need you to do something. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the analysis when these results come in. And if you believe in supporting independent media, people who left the corporate machine to tell you the truth, consider becoming a channel sponsor. Your support makes this possible. It keeps us free from the pressures that compromise so many other outlets. Let's keep building something real together.